All right. And so we are picking up after you guys had an opportunity to explore a few clues that from the things that you had um, pulled off of the attackers in Jackson Elias's apartment. The places that we explored last time were the New York University, or looked into the New York Public Library, Sing Sing Prison, and Prospero House Publishing, talking to Jackson Elias's publisher there. And so at this point, that pretty much filled up most of the day. I believe that the university, I told Barney that we would come back to him because the university didn't take very long. And so the plan was for everyone to regroup together later that afternoon back at the hotel. So Barney has an opportunity to um, run off and explore something else because it's still a while before the designated meeting time. And so Barney, is there anything else that you wanted to explore, look into? Now, as far as Kansas, he spent a fair amount of time over at Prospero House talking to Jonah Kensington, going over the papers, talking about recent events, uh, things having to do with um, Jackson's demeanor, his attitudes, and his last few days. So the library research took most of the day, as did um, the endeavors at the publishing house and Sing Sing Prison. All of that was pretty involving. Took up a fair amount of time. Right, you didn't know how much time things were going to take, so this is completely on Barney. If Barney would do nothing but just head back to the hotel and wait, then that's what Barney would do. But without influence from anyone else, because you guys do not have cell phones or email or texting or any other way to keep in touch with each other. And so you are out of communication until you meet back together again at the hotel in the afternoon. So Barney says he's going to try the import place. So each one of you would have had handwritten notes on the various different clues and things that want to be explored and looked into further. And so Barney pulls out his little notebook, and he goes down the list and he says, "Well, I know that so and so is looking into this and that and everything else. What else is here on the list that I can check off since I have a fair amount of time?" And he decides on the imports. He has to go and look in the um, directory and maybe ask some directions, find out where the imports is at. And so, for reference, remember you guys all have access to your documents. So Emerson imports number 10 on the map. Looks like it is down in South Manhattan, up close to the Hudson River by the docks. I can see you typing there, Barney. Yes, the address is on the card, but you being a Brit would not be familiar with London. I mean, I would not be familiar with New York. And so you'd have to ask some directions. But easy enough to get to. I mean, if you're hailing a taxi or whatever else, you're going to be able to find your way there. So that is not a challenge for you at all, other than I was just bringing up its location so that you would know a general vicinity of where it is compared to everything else. So if you pull up your New York Manhattan map down in the inset window down in the bottom right, you will see number 10, Emerson Imports. Give me just a second to pull that information up. The company is found on a long, narrow building, or in a long, narrow building on the edge of the Hudson River, just beyond Hell's Kitchen. There are loading docks at both ends. The building itself is a warehouse piled high with freight, with a small set of offices that appear to be upstairs towards the front of the building. This is kind of just afternoon, and so the area is bustling with activity. There's shipments coming in, not only here at this facility, but all the other facilities on the docks. You have um, freighters that are docked up to the piers, and they're unloading stuff, and there's day labor crews that are out here. There's you know, normal dock hands and everything else. It's a fairly crowded, bustling place out here on the docks this afternoon. That gives me a reminder. I should give you guys kind of an update on the calendar as far as the date and time for this particular event. You verify that the addresses do indeed match. You go into the building, and there's some stairs that go up to the upper office. The door to the office is closed, but there's a plainly labeled uh, sign on the door that says office. Whenever you knock on the door, there's a man's voice from inside that says, "Yes, come on in." You see a man in his 50s. He's at a desk with all kinds of paperwork scattered all across the desk. Looks like your standard, typical shipping, receiving, warehouse type office. There's invoices laying on the desk. You know, from this distance where you are, um, you can't really read any details on any of the invoices. But he's not making any attempt to hide anything. He's just sitting there at the desk, just you know, looking at you as you walk in. Says, "Yes, sir. How can I help you today?" Name's Arthur Emerson. There were no papers that were found on Elias himself. All these papers were found on the murderers, but you don't know whether or not the murderers had them themselves or if they had grabbed them from Elias's apartment. You kind of guessed by the haphazard way that the various different documents were kind of tucked into their jackets that it was probably stuff that they had ransacked from Elias's apartment. But you can't be for certain. You know, they could have got dislodged and kind of tousled around in the fight that took place in the apartment as well. He's tall, he's well muscled, although it looks like he's starting to soften a little bit in his middle age. His hair is brown. It's still thick and neatly groomed. He looks at you with a rather direct gaze, waiting for you to state your business. And I saw that you typed that, so I'm going to get to it here in just a second. He kind of gives you the impression of a man who stands his ground, or all about business. Just strictly upfront about business and everything else. Yes, you found the right place. This is indeed Emerson Imports. So are you expecting a shipment? Are you wanting to ship something? What's the nature of your business here, good sir? Yes, I remember a man by that name, but I believe that he said his name was Jackson Elias. Uh, sure, we're talking about the same person. Not too many people with that name around. He was in here not too long ago, asking some questions. Are you asking me another man's business, or uh, are you saying that you're here on his business? He kind of is giving you a little bit of a look, almost like he suspects something. He's kind of curious as to where you're going with this. Yeah, I suppose so. He didn't really seem like much of the bookish type when he was in here. But I'm sorry, there's not really too much that I can tell you about it. At the mention of Silas Kawane's name, um, his expression changes just a little bit. Not sure exactly uh, what the meaning of the expression change may be, but there is a look of recognition at the least. Well, that's really interesting. I'm. Well, what kind of business do you have with Silas
I drank some
Naquani?
boiling water because I wanted to whistle. Mitch Hedberg. Did that answer your question?
He kind of looks down at his papers and he says, "Well, I'm not sure that there's too much I can help you with here. Yeah, it doesn't seem like you really know exactly what it is that you're here for either. So, if you would, um, I have business to tend to. So, unless you can be a little bit more specific about what it is that you're here for, then I have to bid you a good day." And you are getting the distinct feeling that he is dismissing you and brushing you off and doesn't want to have any further conversation with you. Um, you don't know what the trigger, why, his justification, or anything else, unless you probe into the conversation a little bit further. Well, that's rather vague. An ancient book or manuscript. I don't know exactly what it is that you're looking for. If you're wanting something from Naquani, why don't you just go directly to him? Well, I figured since you're asking about him that you must know. I mean, of course, he's the owner of the Juju House. Yes, yes. Well, now you know you you found out where Naquani's at. I mean, any you could have gone to any Joe Schmo and asked him that down in Harlem. Now, as you can see, I have a stack of papers here. I have shipments to receive, invoices to send out, and so if there's nothing further, then I believe that's all I can help you with. It is in the paper, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone reads the paper or has gotten the news. It was just in this morning's paper. No, why? Is there something in the paper that I should know about? I was here early this morning before the papers were out on the corners. You're not going to tell me some sort of crazy nonsense like all ships are coming to a halt or the stock market is going to crash or some nonsense like that, are you? His expression suddenly changes whenever you reveal this information. Um, Changes from kind of all business and almost about on edge, being fed up with your crap, to one of sorrow and remorse, shock and surprise. He says, "Oh, I'm I'm sorry. I didn't know. Uh, do they know who did it?" Yes, yes. Well, all right. If you would have just said that up front, then we could have avoided all this unpleasantness. Uh, so you think that Naquani had something to do with it? It wouldn't surprise me any. Yes, I understand he was a well-traveled man, had been all over the place. In fact, when he came to see me, I believe he had just come across from over in England. Said he had been to the Orient and uh, traveling all over the place. Had a particular interest in shipments coming from Kenya. Yes, the writing on the back of the card with Silas Naquani is Jackson's. No, no, nothing for him. He was wanting to know about shipments that were coming in from Kenya um, for Naquani at the Juju House. That place deals in all kinds of weird things, stuff coming over from Africa. So I gave him his name, and that was it. Not within the last week or so. Oh, shipments are always coming in. He's a regular importer and exporter. Stuff coming from to and from Africa all the time. I don't inquire about what people ship, what they receive. I just handle the freight. They come and they pick it up, and so he takes it to his place. Or drops it off for me. All crated up and ready to go. kind of gives you, kind of squints his eyes a little bit and kind of looks at you and says, "Sure, there's declarations, but we don't always search to make sure that the declarations are accurate. You know the number of shipments that come through here each day? If we had to stop and inspect each crate, we'd never get anything done. I don't ask, they don't tell." None that I'm aware of. I won't know until they arrive. Yes, yes, I'll be sure to do that. Uh, I'm the only importer that I'm aware of for goods coming from Mombasa um, to Nakwani. So, if I could ask, what is it that you intend to do with this information? I kind of got the feeling that your friend was going to go visit the Juju house, but I don't know if he ever got around to it or not. He reaches out a hand and pulls in the the 40. He says, "Sure thing, sir. You don't have to, uh, or sure thing, Mr. Covington. Don't have to worry about a peep coming from these lips." Give me an idea roll, Barney. I don't think it's $4 million. I think it's times 20. So that would be $800. Okay, Barney, something is kind of tingling in your mind. You kind of got a little bit of a feeling that maybe you should ask him a little bit more about Nikwani. Like, how he feels about the guy, what he's like, something like that, because what he looks like, you don't really have any information on who this guy is. You have a name and you have a place, but you didn't really do anything to inquire about anything more about Nikwani. Oh yeah, he comes through here, dropping off stuff, picking things up. Guy is creepy, gives me the shivers. Told your friend the same thing. I don't know, just something about him just makes my skin crawl. It's kind of hard to place. He's an old man. Super thin. I mean, he almost looks like a skeleton. But there's just something about his demeanor, his voice. It just kind of sends tingles up my spine. Nice enough man, though. I mean, there's nothing that he does that's mean or anything like that. Pretty quiet. Just an old African man. Really, really coarse skin. Skin's like the texture of a walnut. Has a little bit of white in his hair and lots of missing teeth. Where's one of those robe things and blankets, I guess like other Africans do. Well, he's pretty spry for an old man. Kind of crazy, though. Sometimes I see him dressed like that, and then other times I see him dressed like a normal chap. There's not really too much more I can tell you about it than that, though. You know, like I told your friend, and uh, I don't know if he or the folks over the Juju house had anything to do with your friend's death or not, but I'd be careful if you're going to go looking into that. Oh, for a good number of years. He pays his bills. That's all I'm worried about. Oh, I don't know. You know how it is. Time gets away from you. I'd have to look it up exactly, but sure, something like 5 or 10 years. Guess it'll depend on whether or not there's any other scrawny skeleton looking like old men with missing teeth and white hair and walnut textured skin. Sure thing, Mr. Covington. Mm, you can rest assured these lips are sealed, and I'll let you know if anything comes up. But if you would be so kind, please make sure that he doesn't know you got the information from me. If you go looking for him. Alright, you head back out of the office, and the you would have told the cabbie to move on, or to go on and not wait for you, not knowing how long your conversation was going to be here. Not a whole lot of cabs come around this area, so you have a couple options for getting back to the hotel. You can kind of go into the city a little bit more where the cabs frequent, and you can hail a cab, or you can catch a platform, or some other means of transportation back to the hotel. But however you do that is unimportant and unnecessary. You make your way back to the hotel, and you guys all arrive at various different times in the afternoon. But um, by I think you said your meeting time was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, wasn't it? Okay, so some of you arrive a little earlier than others, but by 4 o'clock, everyone is all there after having conducted your investigations for the day. So I'm going to sit back now, take a chill pill, and just let you all play out this scene in character as you share the clues that you've discovered with the others, and try and decide what it is that you're going to do next. You did indeed get the author's name. That's why I'm giving you this scene here to discuss that all in character. This being an investigation game, um, I will remind you of things periodically, or give you an idea roll to uh, kind of jolt you towards additional clues, like I did for Barney back there in that last scene. If there's something that the player just isn't really quite thinking of, but I do want you guys to keep as much stuff in character as possible. Yes, it was indeed the Juju house, but we are going to go ahead and go with his in character assessment of it, that he is calling it the Juju Club. I'm cutting out. Okay, give me a second. Alright, how about now? Okay, so anyway, what I was saying was it was indeed the Juju house, but we're going to keep it as his in-character assessment that he called it the Juju Club, because, like telephone, there may be some details that get slightly misinterpreted or relayed incorrectly. And that'll just make for a more interesting story. So, seeing as how the author of the book would be a pretty um, critical or. Jeez. Okay, I don't know why I'm cutting out. Everything should be fine here. Give me a second to adjust my. Okay. Anyway, get off of this here. We'll probably pick up a little bit more background noise, but I just set my microphone to where it's basically open all the time and picking up all sounds. I turned the threshold way down. So anyway, seeing as how the author is a pretty pertinent piece of information about the book, but it's something that she could have forgotten, I am going to have Iris give me a knowledge check with 2 bonus dice. Okay, you definitely remember um, the author's name. The author was Nigel Blackwell. You got the idea based off of his the blurb that was inside the cover of the book that he was some sort of a explorer of Africa, safari uh, explorer type individual. And that was not a that was just an ability check, so there's no uh, pips or check marks that you get for that. This ought to be good as Kansas hits everyone with a hammer. As it appears that Harlem has come up in some of your research, you go and you look for a map of Harlem and obtain one. So that you can look at some locations, various different things. The funeral was set to take place at 2 p.m. on the 17th. And also, as just a little bit of a side note here, unrelated to the story, as you discuss things in character, if you happen to have your party sheet pulled up, I learned how to make labels without having to use the pen tool to try to write out a crappy, squiggly mess. And so basically what I have done is created a quest entry with a pen, linking it to that quest, and then place that onto the map, which handily creates a little label for each one of your destinations that you went to. One of those hidden little tricks. Within Fantasy Grounds, it isn't immediately straightforward. Testing. Testing, testing. Testing. Alright, so I'm going to fast forward the clock here. Are you talking about Iris's book? Give me a luck roll. You are familiar with the author. However, your knowledge about the author is that it's pretty obscure. You don't actually know of a person by this name. At least not within the realms of explorers and safari gentlemen and African archaeologists and all that stuff. You have just kind of briefly read over the book. It basically talks about cults, African cults, and things like that. At the particular time, it wasn't really super interesting to you, and it did kind of strike you weird, though, that the guy who wrote this book, you had never heard of this guy before. So, since the funeral isn't until 2 o'clock the next day, is there anything that you guys are going to want to take care of in the morning? Or are you just going to pretty much lie low for the day, make sure that you're rested up and ready to take care of whatever needs to be done, as far as the funeral is concerned? Just devote the day to that? Or is there any other things on your agenda? Okay, when you say address, are you talking about his home address, or are you talking about his station? Okay, yeah, getting the information from the FBI would be relatively easy. Um, all he has to do is just kind of go over there, put the word in, and they're going to be able to give you that information. And so, you get the home address of the captain, You also find the address for the Juju house, and we can take care of the other couple issues as well with Mordecai, and was there someone else? Okay. So I'm going to refer you back to the map that I shared with you as far as your address for the Juju house, because it is on there. So I'll let you conduct your own personal research as far as that is concerned, and you will be able to see exactly where it's located at. The Juju house is number... which one was it? I was pretty sure that I saw it on there. Huh. Maybe it wasn't. I could have swore I saw it on there just a moment ago. Okay. Anyway, so the Juju house, I'll give you the address then. One Ransom Court, New York City. I am not seeing it at a quick glance, but it may be on there. But that is the address of the Juju house nonetheless. Okay, now as far as the other information, you were wanting to know about Mordecai Limming. See, Captain Robson is at the 14th Precinct in Harlem. As far as his home address, let's take care of Mordecai here first. Mordecai Lemming is at the Murray Hill Hotel, which is East 40th Street and Park Avenue. Oh, wait a minute. The one ransom court was incorrect. That was the location of Emerson Imports, I believe. So let's go back to Juju here. Alright, the Juju, actually it is. It's in Harlem at 1 Ransom Court, which happens to be a cluttered alley off of West 137th Street, east of Lenox Avenue. Right there around that area where it says Little Africa. As far as the captain goes, I'm going to just have to pick some place for him here. and we're going to say that he was at um, kind of in South Harlem. We're going to say pretty close to Cathedral Parkway. Right there close to the park. Close to Central Park. Which is number 28. Okay, so you guys get a good night's rest, so everyone give me a luck roll. Barney gains 4 luck. Give me a knowledge roll. As you second guess yourself. Okay, as you think back on the conversation, yeah, everyone gets a luck check. You had a night's rest, so we're doing our between the scenes luck check. So only failures get to increase their luck, which it looks like the only one to do that was Barney. Okay, Irene, for a regular success, I'm going to give you a clarification, but not the full details. You think back a little bit on your conversation, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe he did say it was 137th Street. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said 137th, not 135th. And you could always go scope the place out if you wanted, you know, try and stake it out, be sneaky, or you could even just go in there as an entrepreneur if you wanted to check it out. But you know, we'd do that as a scene, obviously. Oh, there's Brice. Better Nate than Lever. Alright, there's Brice. Brice, give me a sound check so I can make sure that I'm hearing you okay. I saw just like a little pip of, but I didn't hear anything. Alright, give me just a second to make a modification here. Alright, give me a check. Yeah, I'm still not hearing you. Cable input. It's going to be auxiliary. Alright, give me a little check-in now. Still not hearing you. Okay, one more thing to check. Alright, give me a check now. Okay, that's odd because I should be hearing you. Alright, we're just gonna have to have you type for the time being, Brice, till we can get this worked out here. According to all the settings, I should be hearing you just fine. Oh, you're not hearing him either? Okay, yeah. Alright, then at least I know it's not on my end then. Alright, so anytime the little green circle lights up around his user on Discord, you know that he's activating his mic, and we should be able to hear him. Okay, but anyway, so so you guys spend the morning finding out this information. You find out, you do some research. You find out where Mordecai Lemming is at. You find out where the Juju club is at. You have a little bit of trouble finding the Juju club, and then you finally find out that hey, this place is called the Juju House. Maybe um, Barney kind of got him mixed around, because there's not a place called the Juju Club, but there is a place called the Juju House. You finally get that squared away after kind of banging your heads against the wall a little bit. Charles contacts his field office, finds out where the captain's house is at, which precinct he works out of. That one was pretty easy to find. And so anyway, so you spend your morning just kind of doing some housekeeping related kind of stuff, and then around noon or so you start getting ready and to go to the funeral. Yeah, I got you now, Brice. The reason you're getting echo is because I turned a sound loop on my end, so let me turn that sound loop off, because I wasn't sure which channel I need to turn on to be able to hear you. So let me disable uh, both of that microphone so you don't get an echo for yourself. Give me a second to disable that. And now try it and see if you have your echo. Alright, I have you. And give me one more test. I'm not going to speak. I want to make sure that you're showing up on the recording. Okay, you're getting a little bit of echo feedback. Alright, let me adjust voice meter here. Okay, that's going to be 2. Alright, now try it. See if you have your echo. Alright. An echo for yourself or for me? Alright. If I silence you there, I won't be able to hear you. You're silenced there. Alright, is the echo really bad or is it really subtle? Okay. Alright, I'll fiddle with this a little bit at a later date and see if we can't get that cleared up. We don't have very much further to go before we're done for tonight's session anyway. Alright, so anyway, everyone, so we conducted our research. We kind of, what we've been doing so far, Brice, is finishing up the activities for the day before. Remember, you and Irene had gone to the prison and interviewed Hilton Adams there at the prison. That was pretty much all that you guys could do that day. It was a pretty full day of activities. Barney had enough time because the whole deal with contacting the lady at the Miskatonic Library was pretty quick. So he had some time to do something else, and so he ended up going to the docks and checking out Emerson Imports. He talked to the guy who worked there, got some information, and then we did a in-character recap where you guys all got together at 4 p.m. that afternoon at your meeting time and compiled your information, your leads together, and decided what you were going to do for the next day. Of course, Kansas had a slew of information to give to everyone, in addition to the fact that Jackson Elias's funeral was tomorrow, which is now today because we've fast forwarded to the 17th. So, there's a luck roll since you get a opportunity to rest for the night. So roll a d10 there, see how much luck you gain. You gain 5 points of luck. Change that on your sheet. And then the next morning, you had a little bit of time. The funeral's at 2 p.m., so you had a little bit of time from the time that you wake up till the funeral to just kind of do some odds and ends type stuff. And so one of the things that they wanted you to do was to contact your field office and find out the home address for Captain Robson. And so you end up finding that out. You find out that he lives on Cathedral, right near Central Park. You also find out that Captain Robson lives in kind of a little bit of a nicer quality of life than what your typical police captain would. Nothing extravagantly so. It's not enough to really raise a lot of eyebrows, but just a little bit nicer than what most of your standard police officers or police captains would be able to afford. I just pulled that address out of my hat. I'm assuming that a house pretty close to Central Park would probably be a little bit more upscale and even though it's kind of on the south side of Harlem there. Did one more thing that you guys may have forgotten about is the prisoners, the guys that you caught in the action. So maybe Charles could run over there in the morning to the hospital and see what's up with the prisoners. Okay, well, if it's not something that Charles would have pursued, then we won't mess with it. You can do that at a later date. Okay, so it is noon on Saturday, January the 17th, and it's time to start getting ready for your friend's funeral. Now, being the 20s, most people dress relatively snazzy. Um, just even your standard public go out in the street wear would be levels above what we wear nowadays. I mean, it was pretty standard for most people to walk around in slacks and a nice shirt tucked in, and maybe a sport jacket or something like that. Um, that was the routine dress of the day, unless you were just like a street bum or something like that. So all of you would have had some sort of a decent outfit to wear to the funeral. But if there's something above and beyond, if you're wanting to go out and buy a new suit for the funeral or something like that, then you'd need to make um, unless you're Barney or Iris, who can easily afford anything, anyone else would need to make a credit rating roll to go out and buy a new snazzy suit for the funeral. Okay, so um, the weather today is like it has been the last few days: snowy, overcast, cloudy, blustery, uh, snow piled up in the streets. It just doesn't seem like there's going to be any end to the snow. It's still coming down pretty good, but for now they're able to at least maintain the roads and get most of them cleared out. So you were informed that the funeral was going to take place at Cypress Hill Cemetery in Brooklyn. You head to the funeral, and it's a pretty brief, small time type of affair. It appears to be non-denominational. Um, there's a slight snow flurry that is taking place, coming down throughout the funeral. The turnout is relatively small, with only the only mourners apart from yourselves are only um, Jonah Kensington, which Kansas knows and recognizes. Um, and then there's another man and woman there, along with the priest. He gives a brief benediction. Nothing, like I said, it's non denominational, so he doesn't really get into a lot of uh, specifics and things like that, like a Catholic funeral or anything like that would be. It's relatively bland and generic. And then the priest encourages anyone who wishes to step up and share any kind of special words or memories they may have of the dearly departed. Okay, before the funeral starts, Kansas introduces everyone to Jonah Kensington. And as he does, um, Jonah says, um, "Hello, everyone. It's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you, as I'm sure that Kansas has relayed to you after speaking with me yesterday. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I know that Jackson would be most appreciative that you all were here." And this here is Carlton Ramsay and his niece, Willa Sly. Carlton Ramsay shakes your hands, and um, Willa, acknowledges all of your presences, and then just right after you guys do your introductions, the priest starts speaking. So your introductions are kind of cut short as the priest starts his benediction. Yes, roll spot hiddens if you're keeping your eye out for anything unusual. I am seeing a lot of failures there. Okay. Of course, in character, you don't actually know that you've rolled shitty. You just are glancing around, but you're kind of distracted a little bit by the funeral and everything that's going on here. Maybe the the impact of everything has finally hit you. Up to this point, it's all kind of seemed a little bit removed. Okay, Jackson's dead. Whoop-de-doo, we're looking into this stuff, but it really didn't hit you as far as your friendship and what that meant to you, and maybe now once you're here at the funeral, that that it's finally hitting home. That hey, this is real. Jackson's gone. Here we are burying him, placing him into the ground. Where he'll remain, hopefully. And so, as I said, the priest, he is conducting his benediction, and he um, asks each one of you, and he says, "Now, if anyone would wish to step forward and um, share kind words or special memories that you may have about the departed, feel free to do so at this time." No, I don't have an echo at all on my end. Okay. From inside the casket, you hear a sound that says, "Damn, even in here I can see better than you all can." Hmm. Alright, try and say something now, Brice. See whether or not you got your echo. Alright, so I can see you saying stuff, but now I can't hear you, so let me... see what I can do to fix that. In the meantime, you can just go ahead and keep doing your in-character stuff here. If you wish to step forward and give a speech. Yeah, I saw that, Charles. And then if there's any other characters who wish to give a speech, they can do that as well while I fiddle with this. The others will also. I'm just giving you guys a chance to give yours. The only people there are you guys, Carlton Ramsey, Jonah Kensington, and Willis Sly. 3 other people other than you. There's no family or anything else. Nope, there's no reporters. At least not that you guys see, because you're blind. Yes, it is a closed casket. And there wasn't any kind of a viewing beforehand. Pretty much this was straight to the uh, funeral. Alright, so after each of you have gotten up and given your speeches, um, the other individuals step up. Carlton Ramsey, he steps up and he says, "Thank you for allowing me to speak. I will miss my friend Jackson dearly. We have shared many good times together over the years, as he has asked me to publish his books and um, listen to his stories. He was a brave soul who fought for what was right and never turned away from things that would make most people cringe in fear." Okay. I'll let you know the results of your skill test after they speak. And he says, "Jackson will be missed uh, by all of us here, I'm sure, but I know by myself. I do hope that the friends of his that are here can bring justice to this crime that has befallen Jackson and ended his life prematurely." He's a bit teary. He kind of, you know, not too outwardly. He's trying to maintain, the stoic, manhood, kind of thing. But you do see some tears come up in his eyes as he talks about Jackson. And then the next person who comes up is Carlton Ramsey. Or I'm sorry, that was Jonah Kensington that spoke earlier. Now Carlton Ramsey is coming up, and Carlton says he is the attorney. He says, I didn't know Jackson very well, only within the last few years, as he had me uh, maintain his affairs and um, and make arrangements for uh, for him, as he wished. I did hear um, many of his stories as we would talk um, during our meetings, and Jonah is a good friend of mine, and that's how we met. And I do know that that Jackson will be missed by those of us that are here. I am saddened that there are not more people to mourn this loss than what are standing here today. But I would say that Jackson is blessed to have the handful of true friends that are here than those who have crowds of people that could crowds that may attend their funeral, but none of which could truly be called friends. And Jackson, we will miss you. May God go with you. Nice way to say he didn't have friends. Okay. Well, as you can tell from the turnout here, that he really doesn't have a whole lot of people who are mourning his passing. Now let me see what Willa has to say. Willa steps up. She is a tall and athletic woman, dressed kind of sharply as a young professional. You'd guess that she's roughly around her early 20s. I wouldn't necessarily call him a famous author. I mean, his books were kind of well known within a certain niche, but not what you would call a widespread. Remember, I mean, he was only killed 2 days ago, and so it's not like, you know, a bunch of fanboys are going to be driving into New York City to see him. You know, it's not like it's a big, huge media affair or anything like that. You know, other than the one article in the paper, it was pretty quiet, you know. Anyway, she gets up and she is kind of crying a little bit, and she says, although Jackson wasn't my uncle, I would fondly refer to him as Uncle Jackson, because in the short time that I knew him, we had grown close, and he helped me out with my problems as a late teen, approaching my adulthood. And he would always bring me things from his travels, from far off places. And he would teach me of things that we never see here in New York City. He was a brave and knowledgeable man, keen of wit and sly. And I will miss everything about him. Uncle Jackson, I hope that you have now finally found rest. You get the feeling that there is no true relationship between them, considering that he was African American and she is white. But she called him Uncle Jackson nonetheless. He was quite a bit older. You don't think that he's quite that nasty of an old man. Plus, a black dating a white back in those days would have been scandalous. Hmm. Okay, anyway, so the funeral comes to a close as the snow continues to drift down. The casket is lowered into the earth, and there's some workers that come in and start shoveling the dirt in over the casket. Other than the workers and the people who are here for the funeral, you're kind of were keeping an eye on things, and you didn't really notice any snoopers or uh, odd characters hanging around. There were a few other individuals that were passing through the cemetery, going to other graves, but nothing really stood out as being unusual. However, now that the funeral is over, um, Carlton comes over to you and he says, I understand that you've been informed of uh, your inclusion in Jackson's will. Actually, Charles, Kansas told you about that back at the hotel room. Oh, I'm sorry, I missed something here. So there actually were some reporters, but they were all keeping a respectful distance. There were none of them that were kind of up close, but you guys weren't blind enough to where you missed out on that. Right, that's probably the only reason that you saw him was because the flashes were going off. Like, oh, what is that? Oh, hey, there's actually some people over there. As Carlton comes up to you and kind of mentions to you about the will, then as you guys are kind of walking away from the grave site, then the reporters start to move in on you. Not being pushy or forceful or anything like that, but there's a few of them approach you, and in general, all of them are kind of, hollering out and asking questions. Um, do you have any ideas who may have killed Elias, and whether or not his murder was connected to research for a new book? Jonah Kensington holds up his hands and he's like, I cannot report on any books that may or may not have been um, in the process of being written or researched. No, no one is directing any direct questions towards Charles. I mean, at this point, I mean, it's not like he's like New York's most famous FBI agent or anything. I mean, he's just another Joe wearing a suit, just like all the rest of you here. Yep, I hear you. All right, good. Foster podcasts. They're kind of a little bit taken aback by Charles's gruff attitude, and there's most of them back off, but there's one particular reporter that doesn't back off to your threats quite so quickly as the others. Um, this particular person, let me throw up her description. Holy crap. This is really freaking annoying. That's what happens whenever you have a 669 page PDF. It likes to lag. Okay, the funeral, here we go. Alright, let's select her name. Okay. There is a woman holding a pad of paper. She's small, dark complexioned woman with wavy black hair. Um, she seems kind of intense, um, but professional. Very persistent in nature, which is why she's not really backing off at like the others at Charles's exclamation. Um, and she says, just one question, if you would please. I'm Rebecca Schosenberg with the New York Times. I'd like to know, is there any connection between um, the murder of Jackson Elias and the murders that Hilton Adams was accused of? The police aren't saying anything. That's why I'm asking you. What's your question? I'm sorry you feel that way, sir, but a man sits on death row, convicted of murders that he may not have done. Then feel free to come and see me at the New York Times if you wish to talk about it. She hands you her card as you push her out of the way. You think that you may kind of hear her mutter something, but you can't really quite make it out. You think that you hear something like, conceited jackass. You're really playing up that nasty attitude and appearance, aren't you? Okay. They're being respectful though. I mean, they're not like, the paparazzi that's coming up and like, pushing at you and all that stuff. I mean, right, but Charles is taking it personal, and so he's a bit bitter. All right, so as you are obviously pissed off and you're shooing these people away, um, Carlton says, "Come, please join me in my car, and we can get away from the reporters, and we can discuss um, going over the details of the will." Okay, that's fine. You can grab her card. And then Iris slips her a phone number. just had one card that she was holding out, so whoever the first person is to grab it would be the one who gets it. Before Charles pushes her back out of the way. Yep, that sounds fine. Irene can grab the card as Jackson shoves her out of the way, and then Iris can slip her phone number to the reporter. So once you guys are all in the car, um, Carlton Ramsey, Jonah Kensington, and Willa are all in the car. It's a pretty big car. Um, I think they would have had some luxury type cars back then. It'd be like a limo or something like that. I don't know, would have to Google it. I mean, we're not talking about Model Ts. I mean, there were, you know, some nice cars around. Or perhaps there's two cars. You know, one for Jonah. Probably Jonah Kensington probably brought his own, and then Carlton Ramsey has the bigger car. And so Carlton and Willa and two of you can all get into his, and then the other four can get into the car with Carlton. I mean, I'm sorry, with Jonah, who's by himself. The first stretch was in 1928. Of course, Barney will go with Willa. Alright, so as you guys were getting into the cars, Carlton says, Jonah tells me that you're available to go over the will right now. So if you all would like to come to my office, we can do that. And if there's no objections, then that's where we're going to jump forward to. And then we probably have about enough time to go over the details of the will, and then that'll be a good place to stop for the night. Your psychology roll revealed that all of these people seem to be genuinely fond of Jackson Elias. And they're very cordial to all of you as well. You would think, I mean, they don't really know you from Adam, but they're extending you a fair amount of cordiality, just due to the fact of your involvement with Jackson, and that he had spoken so highly of you in the past. although to each of you that may be an inconsequential type thing. You're all like, whatever. I mean, we spent like a few weeks together, and we've corresponded a couple times in the last few years, but I didn't know that I was that great of a friend or whatever. You know, I mean, some of you may be playing it off from that standpoint that, boy, you know, this guy's making a whole lot more out of my friendship than what I thought it was. But, you know, some of you may appreciate it, some of you may not. You know, and that's for your character to play out. You get the feeling that Jackson spent most of his life creating more enemies than friends. In his line of work. Okay, so anyway, you guys head over to the offices of Carlton Ramsey. And his office is in Harlem on 124th Street and Lenox Avenue. The office is small, simply decorated, and neatly kept, housing only Ramsey and his secretary, Willa. Before the reading itself, Ramsey fetches a bottle of good bootleg bourbon out of a cupboard and offers everyone a drink. He seems to be uncaring. If he knows that that Charles is an FBI agent, which you assume that he probably does, but you don't really know for certain. He doesn't seem to be letting it bother him. Charles shoots him. I think that's excessive use of force, Charles. Okay, so what is everyone's reaction? He's offering you a drink. He pulls out the bottle, and he kind of lowers down a cupboard like a hutch, and he sets some glasses out on the hutch, and he pulls out a bottle. He says, "Would anyone like some refreshments?" All right. And so he slips some glass into, or some ice into some glasses, and pours out some. Yes, it is currently Prohibition. Yeah, prohibition was more of a way to bust someone if you wanted to, but it was highly overlooked in many cases. And him having one bottle of bootleg liquor is not really that big of a deal. Um, the ones that they're going to really want to go after are the trucks distributing it. And that's what they're really after. They're wanting to bust the chain, not the individual consumer. Okay, so anyway, other than the two Brits, and I think Kansas said he was going to take a drink as well, is Iris and Charles and Cecil going to all uh, have a drink, or are you going to turn him down? Anyway, after everyone takes their drinks, since I'm not getting any responses here, he heads over to his desk and he opens it up and he pulls out some files and plops them down on the desk. He sits down and he presumes uh, to open up the folder. Yeah, I know that Barney and um, Irene and Kansas are. I was just wondering about Iris and Charles and Cecil. But unless someone's going to like raise a big stink about it, then I know it's relatively decent. I mean, it's um, not quality scotch or anything like that, but it's pretty decent alcohol. And Cecil possibly might do that. He offers his condolences one more time to you, and spends a little bit of time sharing memories of Elias and his um, exploits, often shaking his head in mock disbelief and chuckling a bit. Some of the crazy things that Elias had done. For all the sadness of the occasion, Ramsey seems like he's relatively happy to have other friends of Elias around. During this chat, Ramsay mentions that Elias visited him the day before his death and updated his will. I thought it was kind of strange whenever he came in and requested for a quick update on his will. He didn't really say anything explicitly, but I kind of got the feeling that he thought he was in fear of his life and wanted to make sure his affairs were in order should the worst happen, which I guess was fortuitous that he did that because we know how things turned out. Ramsay then opens up the envelope in front of him, and he proceeds to read the will, breaking off frequently to explain various different details as needed. Elias has given, or in legal jargon, which I'm not going to go forth and everything, but the gist of it is that a full power of attorney has been given to Ramsay by Elias, who has complete authority to liquidate his assets. Point 2. Ramsay is instructed to use these assets to create and manage a trust fund. Point 3. Per request of the deceased, Jackson Elias, any friends of his who attend the reading and make use of this directed fund to continue his investigations, or let me reword that. Any friends of his who attend the reading may make use of the fund to continue his investigation of the Carlisle expedition. Ramsay will make disbursements from the fund to pay for travel, accommodation, living costs, equipment purchases, legal bills, and medical expenses. Participating investigators should make sure they acquire necessary receipts and send them on to Ramsay in a timely fashion for reimbursement. Ramsay is also to act as a central point of contact for any involved in conducting the investigations. If the investigators split into multiple groups, it will be his responsibility to coordinate communications between them via telegram or the most convenient method. He will also assist with recruitment of investigators should the need rise to hire people with special skills, or to bolster their numbers should something happen to anyone involved in the investigation. And then there's one final note. Ramsay kind of raises his head and he says, "This was given to me a week ago when Elias visited. And he declared in his will that it should be given to any who wish to continue his work." Now, what I need to know, this is an important decision for all of you to make. I understand if you need some time to think it over and to decide whether or not this is an undertaking that you wish to embark on. I think we all know of the danger that is involved in it, due to the fact that Jackson is no longer with us. So please do not act brashly. Make sure that you have thought this through and that you are motivated to see it through to the end. If you decide that you wish to bail out, then I'll put out some ads and see if I can't hire some other individuals as needed. It apparently was very important to Elias, or to Jackson, that someone continue his work. He was under the belief that the world may depend on it. Personally, myself, I think that maybe he was a little bit eccentric, and I love the man, but I highly doubt that the fate of the world was dependent on some small-time investigation. Well, thank you, Mr. Covington, and thank you all for what you have done so far. But I guess that Elias was wise to place his friendship in each of you. He looks at Irene with kind of a quizzical look, and he was like, "Well, that's surprising, Miss Ward, considering that I believe that you are a journalist, are you not?" Yes, yes. If only desire were enough, but unfortunately, some amount of skill is required as well. Well, if all of you have decided, then I shall give you the letter that Elias wanted me to to bestow upon those who took up his mantle. And then he gives you this. minutes. That's funny. Well, that's why I said that we are going to leave off with this. So I'm going to post this to Obsidian Portal, and you will have a whole week where you can read it. So I'll see if I can't decipher it here. Greetings from beyond the grave. By now you know that all I've really left you is a whole heap of trouble. If I were still around to have something in the matter, I need to magnify this a little bit here. Take it up to 150. There we go. Opinion on the matter. I would understand if you decided to walk away from it all. Hell, if I'm dead right now, that's a good indication I should have done the same. But you know me too well, and I know you too well. If you were the kind of person who always did the sensible thing, we wouldn't be such good friends. You have been there when I needed you in the past, and I hope you will be again, even if it's too late to save me. I've been pulling threads all over the world, and while most of them are still unraveling, I think I'm onto something. I'm onto something by Carlton and Jonah to fill in more of the details for now. I've left some of my papers and notes with them, which should help you work out which hornet's nest you need to poke next. I trust you to bring my killers to justice. Of course, I'm assuming I was murdered. It will be just plain embarrassing if I was ran over by a trolley car. Follow my investigation to the bloody end and seek out the truth. I'm not asking you to finish my book. None of you can write worth a damn. Your friend, always, Jackson. So anyway, he gives you the letter, and he tells you that $50,000 has been set aside in a trust fund for you to use and to see his research and investigation through to the end. Yes, that is correct. Of course, that is not your money to just have. The fund was created and set up um, to fund any needs that you or any others may have in carrying forth um, Elias's investigations. No, I believe that some of it was investments. Uh, a couple years ago, he did come across a large uh, amount of treasures that he came back from Peru, and he invested it along with some of his sales, and he wasn't an extravagant man. Um, he wasn't a frivolous spender. He saved up his money, and he tucked it away for a rainy day. Unfortunately, it's a shame that he was never able um, to enjoy the fruits of his labor. All of his paperwork, the notes and everything that he refers to, I think were all given to Jonah. And it's my understanding that Jonah gave those to Kansas yesterday. No, as I told you, he came in just the day before his death and made the changes to his will. Other than myself, Jonah, and you all, uh, no one else is aware of his wishes. Of course, if you do pick up his mantle and you start poking around, it won't be long before you'll attract the attention of whoever it was that did this to him. Hopefully, though, uh, you know how to be discreet and have eyes in the backs of your heads.
Did I ever get any findings back on the bloody... Did I ever get any findings back? Echo.
All right. Looks like that's recording fine. Give me a test, Brice. Yep, I'm hearing you. Did you get any kind of echo? And one more time.
Test, test. Well, I guess I should not say test twice if we're testing for echoes.
Any echo there while you were talking?
No. No, sounds good.
Okay, looks like I have it fixed now. So, I'm hearing you, and your voice is also coming across the stream as well. So I just had to figure out the right combination of buttons.
Do you change the settings every week?
I know I went with over this past week, I completely revamped everything. I have a whole new set of programs and a completely different layout on everything that I'm doing. So that's why I was able to get the sound to work and everything else. And I'm also live streaming this right now. So I just had to make a couple minor little tweaks so that you wouldn't have your echo in there. I don't know if you guys also. I'm gonna go ahead and stop the stream here now. Game session is over. We're just shooting the bull.